What happens when you put 3 schools, 3 teachers, and 3 educational experts in one programme? What happens? You'll learn how to invest time to save time. Coming up, thinking skills specialist Lisa Cook gives teacher Julie some easy plenary ideas that every teacher can adapt and use.
One thing with plenaries is that they don't always have to come at the end. It might be that it's in the end of an episode of learning that's 10 minutes into a lesson or 20 minutes in.
An ICT whiz, Nick Packard, delves into the world of online resources with literacy coordinator Sarah.
Have you registered with any professional organisations that would have things like discussion boards, or have you ever done that kind of stuff?
No.
But first, we're off to Lowercroft Primary School in Bury, where early years expert Jane Dixon has come to help Year 1 teacher Deanne Ellithorne save some of her precious preparation time.
I'm part-time, so I only do 2.5 days a week. It means my actual time within school, where I've not got the children around, is very limited.
Right.
So any ways to make the most of that time would be super.
Topic boxes.
Yes.
Can I ask you what's inside?
Definitely books. That's what makes it so heavy.
Right,
definitely books. And then there are some pictures from the wall.
Right.
And a few other bits and pieces.
Is there any way you know what's in here, or are you using your memory?
Using my memory.
Well, I have to say, in your defence, there's so much in it that I defy anyone to actually remember what's in this box. In terms of actually you knowing what's in there, I guess the only way is...
The topic's starting today. Let's go and get the topic box down and pull out bits and pieces.
Right. I've got a box to show you. It's a box on recycling, and I know everything that's in that box. And the reason, a very simple reason, it's certainly not rocket science, and it's, again, it's about, it took time, it's about investing time to save time. But I actually just made a list and saved it onto my computer on a very simple table. And I've got a list of the resources, I know what books I've got, all the recycled artefacts, and I've actually put where they're from, because with the best will in the world, if I get this out next year, where it's from, I have no idea. And this is something that your parents could do.
I like the idea of having the websites on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can add each year, you might, you know, there might be some more that you use, or again, you know, if you save this to your computer, you can add more, you can delete. But one step on from that as well is I actually would recommend that you actually have a topic box file that just sits on your desk. So rather than having to sit in the stock cupboard and see what you've got, I can actually take this home and do my planning and think, well, what have I got in the topic box?
Because you do so much of your planning at home.
Yes.
And you're trying to think what, you know, that's such a simple idea, but, you know, it'll save a lot of time in the long run, knowing where everything is and exactly what I've got.
But in terms of actually getting other people to share the load with you, one tip that I would suggest is trying to use parents more effectively and actually get them involved. One thing that's quite nice to do at the beginning of the year is to have a parents' evening with a difference. So, you know, if you were to invite parents in and to bring the children as well, you know, early evening for an hour maybe, so it's a really nice informal gathering where you talk to parents about, you know, what you're going to be covering, what topics you're going to be doing, how the parents can help the children. So for instance, it might be, you know, can you take them to a museum, or tell them how the washing machine works? So just little simple things that they can do that support what you're doing in the classroom. And I think actually if they understand what's going on in the classroom as well, and know why when you ask for resources, oh, I know it's because they're doing a topic on weather, you're far more likely to get a response than if you send a child home and he just says, oh, Mum, Miss says, can we have an old umbrella? You know, when people are, you know, comfortably wandering around the classroom seeing what you're doing, you could perhaps see if you can get a few parents to form a working party for you, and actually, you know, over the year to come in and do something like an audit of your resources. And certainly in terms of your topic boxes, they can really be very helpful to you in preparing those. I
like that idea of the opening. It's nice as well to let the parents have a look at the classroom as well with the children, so I think they'd really like that idea of coming in and having a look round and finding out more about what goes on in Year 1.
For copies of these resources and more of Jane's ideas, log on to our website at www.teachers.tv. Over in Macclesfield, it's Lisa Cook's turn to give you wonderful teachers some of your time back.
Hello.
English teacher Julie Scarrett is finding plenaries problematic.
So can we just start by you telling me what it is you'd like to get from this discussion?
Well, for me, part of my teaching that I find onerous is the plenaries.
Right.
And how to use plenaries so that they're useful.
Yes. And not just something that we know Ofsted looks for when you come into a lesson.
Not something that's tagged on at the end of my lesson.
One thing with plenaries is that they don't always have to come at the end. It might be that it's in the end of an episode of learning that's 10 minutes into a lesson or 20 minutes in.
Right,
So
I've never seen them, thought of them like that.
So that's something that you can think about when I'm going to talk about a few different ideas. It doesn't just have to come at the end of a lesson.
Right.
A nice simple one to use is a 357. So on their own, can they think of 3 things, if I was teaching history, 3 important facts? If you've just done a novel, maybe the 3 most interesting things about a particular character. Right. So that's on their own in silence.
Okay.
Then they turn to the person next to them, and in a pair, they have to bring their 2 lists of 3 together to come up with 5. Okay. So they have to prioritise their ideas and a bit of negotiating, a bit of justifying. And then the 2 pairs come together and bring their 2 sets of 5 to create a list of 7. So there could be several ideas that are repeated, but they have to join their ideas together. And it takes about 5 minutes, and it means that everybody in the class is involved, everybody's focused, and then you can go around and ask for one thing from each group. The nice thing about this is it requires no further preparation. It can go in anywhere in the lesson, not just at the end.
Right, okay.
But when their energies are kind of lagging at the end of a lesson, it's a good way of picking them up and refocusing.
It can go with any area that we're covering, doesn't it? Any topic you can apply that to.
So it's a nice review tactic to use.
It ticks all those boxes, doesn't it? You're looking at individual learning, paired learning, and then group work. Picking up what you've said, to me it's this idea of doing plenaries throughout the lesson that I'd never really have thought of it like that. I always thought there had to be this sort of tag at the end that had to pull it all together.
Well, we know that from how the memory works, the more review points you get, the stronger the memory.
Right.
So if you've done maybe 2 or 3 ends of episodes of learning that's building on something, that's going to be a much deeper learning process that's taking place.
Yeah.
Something that might be a bit more physically active and get them up and out of their seats. Have you ever used an opinion line?
No.
Right. So in your classroom you would create 2 signs, and if you're set up in a classroom where the desks are in 2 sets of rows like they are in here, you have at one end, I totally agree, at the other end, I totally disagree.
Okay.
And you could give a little bit of thinking time and give them a statement. So something that you've been working on. What are you working on with Year 7?
Language change and Chaucer.
Which characters have they looked at?
The miller.
So you could put in the context and say that the miller took a really active part in the story.
Right, okay.
Okay? Totally agree, totally disagree. You get thinking time, and then you need to go and stand on the line to show how far you agree or disagree with this statement.
Okay. And do they have to support their statement?
They do. What happens is they go and stand. Now, initially when you do this, they want to stand with their friends. But the next stage helps them get rid of that. So they've got up and they've stood where they think they should do. And then they have to explain to the person next to them how far they agree or disagree and why they're stood there. Then you ask them at key points along the line to explain why they stood where they are. And that gives the opportunity to hear all of the different answers. And once people have had the opportunity to say why they stood where they are, they could then change places.
That involves quite a lot of classroom management as well, though, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, having them all out to their seats, moving around as well, lining up.
But it's a good distraction tactic, and I found that even in really challenging schools, they want to do it because one, they're out of their seats, which is always a bonus, isn't it? They always like doing that. And 2, they get the chance to say what they think.
Right, okay.
So they are interested, they are motivated. And sometimes it takes a couple of times to get used to it because it might be skills that they're not used to doing.
It's training, isn't it?
Yes.
To learn those skills.
For copies of these resources and more of Lisa's ideas, log on to our website at www.teachers.tv. Nick Packard's job is helping teachers save time through ICT, and Literacy Coordinator Sarah Giles from Worth Primary in Cheshire could really use his help.
I'm the Literacy Coordinator for the school, and I find that a lot of the staff come to me and say, where do I find resources for various things? And I'm sort of like off the top of my head I can never find them, and I spend a lot of my time sort of searching on the internet, and I don't get very far really, and I get very frustrated quite quickly.
Do you have kind of certain points or places that you tend to go to start your searches, or...?
I'll start with Google. You
start at Google. Have you used people like the National Literacy Association and sites like that?
Yeah, I have done, yes, but I don't find their site very easy to navigate.
One of the things that I did like about their website is that they actually do have they review resources, they review particularly text. I think I've actually got a view of it on here. You can search across the key stages based on whether it's Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, you know, all that kind of stuff. And you get quite a nice little summary of all the ones that they've found that they think match up with what you're asking for. It's not too bad. I mean, 122 hits on it and searches, it gives you something to work from.
It's a start.
It's a start, exactly. The other thing that I think is possibly worth looking at if we're considering primarily online stuff is, have you sort of registered with any professional organisations that would have things like discussion boards, or have you ever done that kind of stuff?
No, I haven't.
I mean, is that the kind of stuff you would ever do on the internet?
Probably not. You know, I'm one of these people that doesn't check her email that often, really, and so, you know. I
mean, it's one of the interesting things you put in the information you sent me before today's meeting, was you did actually say that, you know, you were prepared for the idea that actually what you need to do was change the way you did things. And if you're going to change a bit of your practice, I would try and change that habit, because you do need to invest a bit of time in the first place in deciding which organisations you actually want to tap into. And you do have to be fairly disciplined about going back and having a look to see what's changed and getting into that. But I think you'll find that as you start to do that, the benefits will accrue very rapidly. I run a thing called an RSS feed on lots of sites. RSS, it stands for really simple syndication, but basically what it does is it says, here's a website that the content changes regularly because it's a discussion board or it's a blog or something like that. And my little RSS feed reader pops up to tell me every time something on this site has changed. It is a nice way just for you to be prompted to go and have a look at something, but also so that you know it's not a wasted journey. I know something's changed on this site, so I can go and have a look rather than going back to a site that hasn't changed in 3 weeks.
That sounds brilliant.
Basically, what you'd be doing is when you're looking at different websites, particularly if they are discussion boards or blogs or something like that, things where the content does change quite a lot, this little button up here will go from grey to orange. If it goes orange, basically that means I can set this up as a feed. And if you click on it, it'll open a little drop-down menu and it'll say add this feed. In the current version of Internet Explorer, you've got this little yellow star in the top corner, which is your favourites centre. But there's also a couple of other things in here, which is your feeds and your history. And it's this feeds bit. If you click on that button, it actually gives you a list of the websites that you've got your RSS feed set up to. When one of your RSS feeds sites is updated, you'll see the text will go bold. So you know that this is a site that something has changed on since I last looked. And it remembers when you looked. It doesn't just say, yeah, it's changed today. Last time you came in, to this time, to what it's like today is different, so I put it in bold. And all I've got to do then to open that site is click on that. So it acts as a nice little reminder. But it's nice stuff.
For copies of these resources and more of Nick's ideas, log on to our website at www.teachers.tv.
My top tip is to work and communicate effectively with my TA. For instance, if I'm busy doing a plenary or doing the register, my TA can be using her time to save me time by marking spellings or preparing for the next lesson.